Hello everyone. Today I am going to explain Hopkins' most impressive poem, The Windhover. This is a sonnet and it's packed with several stylistic features like alliteration, assonance, combined adjectives, signet, sprung rhythm, and internal rhyme. All of these elements together go on to make this poem an extremely interesting study. So without wasting any further time, let's see what Hopkins' sonnet, The Windhover, is all about. Hopkins is the first experimental modernist poet of the Victorian era and was known for his originality, his passionate sincerity, and his brilliant craftsmanship. He has earned a permanent place among the finest English poets. The poem The Windhover brings out clearly the various devices used by Hopkins and his experiments with versification, though they rendered a kind of an obscurity and oddity to his poetry. Yet they have set him apart amongst other poets as an experimenter. Windhover is also known as falcon or kestrel. The bird is not of a kind on which poets have usually written poems. Nightingale, cuckoo, skylark have often been the focus of attention. The poet catches sight of the falcon flying high and solitary in the early morning sky, and Hopkins uses the word caught in the very first line of the poem. I caught this morning's minion. Caught appears to be a better replacement and more effective word than see. Two epithets, morning's minion and kingdom of daylight's dauphin, are coined by the poet. And the bird is symbolic of majesty and is therefore referred to as dauphin. And the movement of the verse follows first the upward surge of the poet's spirit, then turns away to lift and swing with the bird's flight as it rides the wind. A bird's flight, a monarch. The verb caught conveys exactly the first swift shock of delight. From the initial impact, it is as though the poet, in spirit at least, is himself snatched up to fly. Now, to talk about some of the important points that need to be considered about the poem. I have already told that the poem is regarded as Hopkins' masterpiece, and it is subtitled To Christ Our Lord. It is a sonnet that is written in sprung rhythm. And the poem talks about the skill with which the bird controls its flight through the air. It talks about the majesty and the grandeur of the bird. The poem can also be understood as a tribute paid to Jesus Christ and symbol of Christ. And all the attributes of falcon that the poet has ascribed to falcon, they are equally valid when applied to Christ. As we all know that Hopkins is known for his experiments and poetry, and the very first initial lines of the poems show this through the epithets that the poet has given to the falcon, like morning's minion and kingdom of daylight's dauphin. He has also made use of compound epithet dapple dawn drawn, and the movement of the verse follows the movement of the bird, which coincides with the movement of the spirit of the poet as well. Run-on line is one of the major characteristic features of Hopkins' poetry, and we find that it is not just the rhythm and the meter that runs on to the next line, but if we have to understand the meaning of it also, then the meaning also runs on to the next line. And this run on line, all in a way, has a symmetry with the movement of the bird, its dips, swings, and lifts. The images that the poet has used for the bird are very striking. He has given three important images. They may seem unfamiliar, but they are very apt. Firstly, he compares the bird with a skilled horseman pulling on the rein of an untamed animal in a ring and keeping it within the limits of the rein. A skilled rider is able to keep the animal in check and sits erect. Similarly, the air underneath the falcon is rolling, but the falcon's command is such that it levels it and does not let the air to overpower him. This emphasis on falcon's supremacy and control is further heightened later in the sonnet when the long turning glide of the bird appears to have rebuffed the big wind. The second image is that of a nun. Falcon's wings are described as wimpling because of the way the feathers appear in grace when seen from below. Just as the movement of a nun causes ripples in the robe, similarly the wings of the falcon ripple when it flutters. So the first image of a horseman was a steady one, whereas the second image is a moving image. Another is that of ice skating. Hopkins compares the graceful movement of the bird in the air with that of an experienced skater who is making a figure of 8 on ice. Just as the skater on ice sweeps smoothly and takes a smooth bend, the bird also suddenly changes its course and direction. Hopkins is known for his poetic theory of inscape and in-stress, and the poem presents this special unique perception of Hopkins. Windhover as a poem is remarkable for conveying the writer's inscape of the falcon in flight and of what the bird suggests to him. Inscape stands for the inner form of nature, and in-stress is the inner vitality of things. So while he is watching the movement of the bird, simultaneously he is remembering and comparing the bird to Jesus Christ. It has a different inner form, a different perception, and this comes through inscape. Just like any other sonnet, this sonnet also has octave and sestet. And it's very interesting to note that the octave consists of hyperboles, ecstatic hyperboles, whereas the sestet comprises of very homely images. So the last 3 lines of the poem, of the sonnet, have 2 more images. The first is that of a plough, which is used to churn the soil, and this way it just renews the soil. Not just renews the soil, but it also shines due to the continuous use. The second image is that of the dying embers of a fire, which look lifeless from outside, but when poked, the gold vermilion of fire. The poem can thus be understood as Hopkins' declaration of Christian purpose. Hopkins addresses Christ as "O my Chevalier." Christ's crucifixion is also conveyed through images of buckling, gashing, and galling. Throughout the poem, parallel drawn between the Windhover and Jesus Christ. I hope that the poem is quite clear to all of you, and we have to remember that this poem cannot be explained unless we explain the concept of inscape. Hopkins' concept of inscape is quite apparent in this poem. Hopkins maintained that when all the physical attributes and manifestations combine together and give it an inner form, then that becomes an inscape. In this case, the physical attributes of the bird, the splendor, the vigor, the energy, the zeal, the passion, the flight of the bird, the grandeur, the majesty, all of these elements that are physical and the outside elements that are found in the bird, they all combine, fuse together, and reflect towards that ecstatic moment of recognition when the poet realizes that all of these are the attributes of God and that the bird is a manifestation of God. So this establishes Hopkins' supreme and firm faith in God, his belief in God. And so that is his inscape. When all the external beauty of the bird goes on to reflect and make him recognize that it's all because of the supreme power and grace of God. So that's all for today. We'll meet next. Stay tuned. Till then, bye.